Welcome to Musings of an Earth Girl. I am your host, Bleadon-Maffei, and I'm so grateful for our time together. This podcast is designed to be a loving, sweet space where you can rest for a while. We'll be talking about snippets of life, we'll be talking about angels, we'll be talking about moments of inspiration that serve as catalysts to move our life forward. I'm so grateful for this time together. So sit back and get comfortable, and we'll see where this conversation takes us. Hi, beautiful friends. Laurel here. Welcome to the inaugural episode 1 of my podcast, Musings of an Earth Girl. I am so excited to get to share this with you. I thought I would first introduce myself. So for meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. You can often find me at my website, illuminating-souls.com. You may know me from Facebook, where I have a fairly active page, or somewhere in the world. I tend to show up in a lot of places. And my favorite thing is helping you connect with your angels and guides and awaken to the beauty in your soul. I believe we are all divine beings in human form, and sometimes we're very, very human, and hopefully we also have times when we lean into our divinity. So this podcast has been something that has been incubating with me for a while. My favorite podcasts are ones that keep me company. My absolute favorite podcast is called Sleep With Me. And the host's name is Andrew Ackerman, who also goes by Scoots, Dear Scooter. And I have found that I love his podcast because he speaks in these lulling, soothing tones. He tells stories from his own life. He meanders, and I find them enchanting, and they help calm me down and help put me to sleep. And there's something so intimate about this act of putting the earbuds in my ears and hearing someone's voice come directly into my consciousness and into my heart. And so years ago, when I thought about doing a podcast, I thought it had to be this really big, important podcast where I would teach you very, very important things and I would help change your life. And that was a lot of pressure. Right, that's a lot of pressure. And in the couple of years that I've been listening to Sleep With Me, it really came forward that I could create a podcast that was simple, that was an opportunity where I could share with you stories from my life, experiences I've had, snippets of wisdom, not necessarily to try and teach you something super important, because listen, you're really already very, very wise. Probably similar to me, you have shelves of books that inspire you that you maybe even haven't read, which is how my bookshelf is. I think I've probably read 1 out of 3 books that live on my bookshelf. So you're already learning a lot and you're already processing a lot. And I think life right now moves so quickly. I really want this podcast to be a gentle, loving space where I get to keep you company. So whether you're going to or from work, you're walking the dog, you're muddling through your day, or even if you put the earbuds on and you're about to go to sleep or it's 3 a.m. and you can't sleep, I just want to be a voice in the world that sends you love and kindness and compassion and goodness. And each episode's going to be a little different. My intention is to share with you different stories from my life. And where we're going to start, because I think it's only appropriate for the very first ever episode of Musings of an Earth Girl, is to share with you 2 things. One is, where does Musings of an Earth Girl come from? And the other thing is, how did I get started on this journey of working as a light bearer, an intuitive and angelic practitioner? So those 2 morsels of goodness will come to you today. So the first one is, where does Musings of an Earth Girl come from? So, as I said earlier in the podcast, we are divine beings having human experience. And I really appreciate the distinction of that duality. We are not people who have a soul. I used to think that was the case. I was a person and I had a soul, and my soul lived somewhere far away, and that I hoped that at some point when I crossed over, that I would be reunited with my soul. And then when I started my spiritual journey, I just loved this theme of we are divine beings having a human experience. And sometimes we're having a very, 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 very human experience, and we forget who we are. So when I'm working, when I'm doing angel sessions or teaching classes, I go into what I call practitioner mode. So when I'm in practitioner mode, I put my stuff aside and I ask the angels and God, and if I ever use any words that aren't your words, if I use a word like God and that's not your word is universe or source or all that is, please just substitute your language. Just connect with this vibrationally. And if anything I ever say doesn't resonate, just let it go and just take the parts that work for you. So when I go into practitioner mode, I connect with the angels and with the divine and with God, and this beautiful light streams through, and this wisdom and love and compassion. It's like all of those qualities that can reside within me become bigger and brighter and more pronounced. And so when I am in practitioner mode, I am feeling the love, and I am feeling faith, and I'm feeling patience, and I am feeling goodness. And I wish I could tell you that that was sustainable by me. It might be sustainable by other people, but I am very mercurial, and I feel deeply, and I feel everything deeply. I feel love deeply. I feel joy and inspiration deeply. And I also feel worry, and I feel overwhelm, and I feel impatient and crabby, and all of those things that come along the bell curve of human emotions. So I call that part of me my earth girl. So I've got my practitioner self who is love and light, and I love everybody, and I have faith and goodness and kindness. And then there is my earth girl who gets overwhelmed and gets impatient and forgets I have this angelic connection. So that's where the title of the podcast comes from, Musings of an Earth Girl. So you'll probably hear me over the episodes talk about my practitioner self versus my earth girl. And I find it to be so helpful to think of myself in that duality, because in this way, I'm not disappointed in myself. I think there's this belief that when we come onto this journey of self-growth or the spiritual journey, that we somehow are going to reach this place where we are in Zen peace all the time. And maybe there are some beings who can attain that. That's actually never been my goal. I love life, and I want to live all of it. I think that the shadow and the light, it's all who we are, right? We have good days, we have bad days, we have times that are blessed, and we have times that are clumsy. And I'm here for it all. So that's inspirational morsel number one. That's where the musings of an earth girl come from. And if you identify as male or beyond the binary, as my friend Andrew Ackerman says in Sleep With Me, you can call this, musings of an earth person, earth guy, earth being, earth earthling. Please shift the title in a way that works for you. I think of myself as an earth girl, so that's where that comes from. But everybody is welcome to listen. However you identify or don't identify, you are welcome here. You are welcome to come into this podcast as a skeptic. If you want to roll your eyes and go, I can't believe that's true, I can't believe she thinks that, that is welcome too. All of you is welcome here. The skeptic, the love, the joy, the wonder, the the discernment. Just bring all of who you are into this conversation, and we'll see where we go. So the second morsel of goodness I want to share with you is, how did I even get on this path, right? I used to think that people who did this work were born awake, that there were certain people in the world who were born open to their clairvoyance and their intuitive gifts, and they would see ghosts, and they would, talk to dearly departed loved ones on the other side, and this was just a part of who they were. I knew a handful of people who had been like that, and I knew that that wasn't me. I was raised Jewish, and Judaism was a big part of my life. So I loved going to temple, and I very much identified culturally in a religious way as Jewish. I grew up in a very intellectual family, and there was no talk of mysticism, no talk of this kind of magic, and I didn't identify it as part of my life. So my life, I have a lot of different adventures in my life, but we're going to focus on this one. So it's the late 80s, and I am in my mid to late 20s. So I'll save you the math. I was born in 1962, and I moved to Los Angeles in 1985 because I had always wanted to work in the entertainment industry. As a small child, I loved television. Television was my thing. I loved it. I wanted to work in it. I didn't know how people would get to work in television, but I was going to figure it out. And so I wound up moving to Los Angeles to work in the television industry. And my career took me to a small film company that had a television division, and I was one of their broadcast materials coordinators. So if different television stations around the country were airing some of our movies or television shows, I had to make sure they had them in-house. So it was a lot of coordination. It wasn't terribly glamorous. It's not as if I was working on, LA Law or a cool TV show, but I was close. I was in the entertainment industry, which had been a lifelong dream of mine. And so it filled me. But here's the thing about the entertainment industry is that if people are at the top of the food chain, if they are agents, if they are producers, directors, movie stars, if they're in union positions, they tend to earn really great money. I mean, the people at the very top get very, very wealthy, but most of the people who are support staff don't make much. It's as if, they know that we would practically do this job for nothing, and so they don't pay well. And that certainly was the case for me. I was very much at a pay scale, very entry level. And so it wasn't the kind of salary that could really support me. I could share an apartment with other people, and I drove in an expensive car, and we knew where all the happy hours were with the snacks and that kind of stuff. But at some point I decided I wanted to earn more money. And I had a dollar amount in mind. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but there's this dollar amount. And this is the amount that if you make this amount of money, your life will change. And my dollar amount at the time was $30,000. I thought if I can make $30,000, it's a different ballgame. I can probably get promoted. I can move up in the company or in the industry. I could have my own apartment because at that time that was a ton of money. So the only way I could think of to make that kind of leap in my career was to get an MBA, right? So remember, this is the this is the 1980s. Think of like the movie Wall Street with Michael Douglas, right? This is about money and we're going to learn to make it and use it. And so Pepperdine University had an MBA program that was geared towards working professionals. And I went to an orientation and it sounded great and the financing, everything seemed to fall in place. And so I signed up. And when I signed up, one of the counselors said to me, the very first class you have to take in this program is a class in human development. And this professor, and she pointed to his picture in the catalog, she said, you should take it with him. Everyone loves his class. He's a fantastic teacher. And I said, okay, this sounds good. And I signed up, not having any idea what I was getting into. I just was like, teach me to make more money and I'll show up. So our first class, we walk into the classroom, and keep in mind, these are people that accounting companies and businesses are sending for their MBAs. We're business focused, is I guess what I'm trying to say. And the classroom was set up with long tables that faced each other in a square. I mention this because usually my style in a classroom is I sit towards the back. I'm one of those people who kind of crouches in the back so that I'm not seen. It's not that I have a problem with visibility, but typically in a classroom, I'm trying to keep a low profile. And so I knew right away I was sort of uncomfortable because we were all looking, we could all be seen. We were all looking at each other. And it turns out, that the professor was teaching this class in human development from a very metaphysical, new thought wisdom perspective, which was really weird and unexpected, especially back in the late 80s. Remember, there was no Oprah back then. I mean, she existed. She was on the scene, but not like the Oprah we know of now. So there were no Super Soul Sundays, and there was no Hay House Radio. Louise Hay was just getting started. So this was really out of my comfort zone. He's teaching things like law of attraction and your thoughts create your reality. And I thought he was a little nuts. I rolled my eyes a lot in the beginning. And I remember even that in the beginning, like the first week or two of class, we had to pick the subject for our final paper. And we had to pick it early in the semester because we would be working with this modality or subject throughout the semester. And we could pick things like iridology, which is the study of the eyes, pyramids. I don't know if we could do past lives, astrology, like all of these different topics. And I thought this was all kind of crazy. So I picked lucid dreaming. And lucid dreaming, for those of you who don't know, it's about coming into a state of awareness while you are in a dream, like the kinds of dreams we have at night. You're in a dream and you can take control of it and then control the outcome. Which I thought, well, okay, I believe in dreams. I believe we dream. I believe there could be value in lucid dreaming. So this is going to be my project. So as we went through this class, I was really in resistance about all of this. And he had us read all these interesting books. And one of the books was called Mastering Your Hidden Self by Serge Kahali King. And Serge King lives in Hawaii, and he is a Hawaiian shaman. So this book was about Hawaiian shamanism. And it talked about the different parts of consciousness, the subconscious, the present conscious, the higher self, all of these concepts I was not aware of. So this idea that we had a higher self, at that point I had never really given thought to. And there were different tenets such as energy flows where attention goes. You are not bound by any experience of the past nor any expectation of the future. And one of the things he had written in his book was that if as a child you are taught that when you're outside and it's cold and it's raining and your feet get wet, you will create a cold, that now when those conditions are met, you'll get sick. And I remember going into class that week and arguing, like, this is ridiculous. Everybody knows colds are created by viruses. And I share all this with you to let you know I was very resistant. I was a skeptic. What wound up happening is over the semester, I started to thaw because these concepts started sinking in with me. I resisted them, but things started happening. I started melting to it. And at some point, Serge King was coming to LA at that point, and I got to see him speak several times, and there was something very magical about him. And I also remember one of his associates who was a practitioner of Lomi Lomi, which I believe it's massage and energy. I can't remember which. I think it's both. It might be just one. Forgive me if I'm not getting that right. And this particular event was held in a large hotel room near the airport, and the practitioner was working on a woman. She was on a massage table. And my recollection was he was doing energy work on her as well as massage. This was, again, the late 80s, so we didn't all have our handy-dandy cell phones like we have now to take video, and they were recording it. So to record it back in the late 80s, you needed to have a setup. You needed to have a pretty substantial video camera, and you needed to have a pretty substantial microphone with a long cord that was corded to the camera. And so they had this very big microphone, like think about what the old news anchors used to use. And it was hanging by a cord, and they had used duct tape to tape it to the ceiling so that they could record what he was talking about. So it was sort of dangling down about a foot or two. And what was so fascinating is at some point while he was working on this woman, this microphone started spinning like a pendulum. It started spinning around, and then it started spinning faster and faster as the energy that he was working with grew to the point that the microphone fell down. And I thought, that's crazy that just happened, and I just witnessed it. And there was no sleight of hand. There was no fishing wire off to the side. And so I started having these kinds of experiences that were causing me to redefine my perspective of the world. Because if what I was learning was true, this is a game changer. Maybe I'm not who I think I am. Maybe what I think is possible through my life is just a small fraction of what is actually possible through my life. And I became actually one of the more active students in the class. Like I just asked so many questions. And one of the things I may talk about periodically is I love astrology. I'm not an astrologer. I know just enough to sound like I know what I'm talking about. But one of my aspects in my natal chart is that the planet Mercury, which rules how we think and how we process mentally, is in Gemini. I have Mercury in Gemini. And basically that means I'm a binge learner. That when there's something I want to learn, I have to consume everything at once. So once the pilot light is lit of there's something I want to learn, I consume it. I binge it. I can't learn fast enough. And so it was so interesting because across this semester, I went from this resistance to this thaw to all of a sudden needing to binge learn. Like, okay, I have these questions. How does this work? How does the other thing work? And I was fascinated by it. And I don't know that I was still completely sold. Like there was no part of me that thought that I was psychic. But I was beginning to entertain this thought that there was a lot more to consciousness and to the world than I had previously thought. So that's part one of my story. And I know you've probably realized at this point, I have not shared some cool, awesome psychic experience with you yet. So that's going to be the next episode because that's a really cool story and it's going to take me a while to tell it to you. So part one of this episode is how I even got in the door of thinking about new thought, wisdom, and metaphysics. It was through Pepperdine University's MBA program of all things. And in the next episode, I'm going to share with you my first ever psychic experience. So I'm hoping you're enjoying this podcast and our connection. My intention is to tell you these little stories. We're going to have lots of little stories, different reflections, different musings. I really want this to be a podcast where you don't have to work very hard. You don't have to take notes. You don't have to try to understand something. I'm just going to ramble and muse and skip along for a little while with you so we can keep each other company. So wherever you are in this moment, whatever you are doing, I send you love. You know, the beautiful thing about sending love is it's often thought of as this trite thing. Sending you love. But I actually really believe that love is a vibration. And when I say I am sending you love, I literally am sending you love. I'm asking the angels to amplify this love connection. And so right now there is a wave of love streaming to you. And you might wonder, how is this even possible? You didn't even know that I was going to listen to this when you recorded it. And that is true. But you know what? The universe knows. When the angels and love and divine light and guidance are concerned, there is no time and space. So whenever you're listening to this, the angels will join you in live time if you would like them to, and will send you love. So my friends, the angels and I are sending you love. And we just invite you to receive it. And if you think I'm a little nutty in saying that, I'm going to just share one last brief story with you. Years ago, I would volunteer at my alma mater, the University of Santa Monica. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. It's where I got my master's in spiritual psychology. So I was volunteering there as a reader. And each Friday night when the readers would gather, we would have a sharing circle. And we would ask for light. So if somebody was sick, if something was happening, we would say, would you please send me light? That's a sort of, metaphysical term. I'm sending you light. And this one particular Friday night, my dog of 15 years was very, very sick. And so I stayed home with her. I really kind of thought this might be the end, the beginning of the end for her. And I had asked them to put us in the light, to send us light. And it was around 7:00 when the circle would be forming. And I was watching TV and my dog was asleep on the floor. When all of a sudden, the best way to describe it is I felt this whoosh of light, and my dog picked her head up at the exact same time that I felt this, huh? She looked at me and I looked at her and I said, oh my God, Tessa, they just sent us the light. And in that moment, it was so impressed on me. This light is visceral and tangible. It's real. It exists. Because I was not even thinking about the timeline or that they were sending us light, but I could feel it. I could feel the love missive coming to both of us. So soak it in the way the flowers in the garden do. I am indeed sending you light and love. Thank you for this time together. I am so grateful. And thank you for sharing my first ever episode of Musings of an Earth Girl. I look forward to connecting again soon. Have a blessed day. Musings of an Earth Girl is brought to you by me, Laurel Bleadon-Maffei, and Illuminating Souls. I invite you to join me at illuminatingsouls.com, where you can learn more about the classes and services I offer, including angel readings, soul mentoring, and classes designed to inspire your spirit. You also can sign up for the Daily Inspiration email blast, where you'll receive an uplifting message from me each day by email, Monday through Friday. You can sign up for that at my homepage at Illuminating Souls. Thank you, dear one, for spending this time with me. You are why I do this work. You are why I've created this podcast. Because I know that whenever our souls meet, when we meet in the land of love and light and inspiration, the world becomes a bit brighter. So thank you for who you are and the light you shine in this world. I am so deeply grateful for you. I send you love, I send you blessings, and I send you sparkles of magic.